You're listening to episode 53 of Lifestyle Locker Radio with Ben Greenfield.
I guess the newer definition of biohacking, if we did want to wrap all that stuff into it, would just be the concept of taking your biology, and hacking it to do something a little bit more quickly than it might otherwise not be able to do.
Hi, I'm Dr. Josh Hand, and welcome to the Lifestyle Locker Radio, where we dive into what makes an awesome lifestyle. From relationships to money mindset, nutrition to fitness, emotional health to peak performance, we bring you on an amazing journey to unleashing your human potential. So here's a little bit about Ben Greenfield before we get him on. He's the author of the New York Times Bestseller, Beyond Training, and the Christian Gratitude Journal. Ben Greenfield's balanced approach to fitness, nutrition, and health comes from his extensive experience in the fitness and wellness industry as one of the country's leading personal trainers and wellness consultants. In 2008, Ben was nominated by the NSCA as America's top personal trainer. And in 2013 and 2014, Ben was voted as one of the top 100 most influential individuals in health and fitness. A frequent contributor to health and wellness publications and a highly sought-after speaker, Ben's understanding of functional exercise, nutrition, and the delicate balance between performance and health has helped thousands of people around the world achieve their goals and improve their quality of life. Ben's goal in life is to make healthy living inspiring, entertaining, and educational, and his rebel yell goes like this, in quotes, "I love getting fit, feeling good about the way my body looks, and fulfilling my deep-seated drive to live life to the fullest by achieving difficult feats of physical performance. But I was fed up with feeling like crap from the extreme exercising, strange foods, feeling of constant stress and soreness, and worrying about the toll my hectic lifestyle was taking on my body. So I have found a way of training, eating, and living that is perfectly healthy and natural, but still allows me to look, feel, and perform at my peak capabilities," end quotes, right? He is currently the founder and owner of Greenfield Fitness Systems, a company that develops innovative and cutting-edge fitness and nutrition services and solutions to help people reach their physical and mental performance goals, whether that be to defy aging and achieve longevity, cross the finish line of an Ironman triathlon, or simply shed a few pounds. Ben coaches and trains individuals for general health, longevity, weight loss, lean muscle gain, holistic wellness, and sports performance, both from his physical location in Spokane, Washington, and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, if I've said that right, as well as all over the world via online training and consulting. So I know that was a mouthful. Here's Ben Greenfield. Three, two, one. Everybody, here in the locker room today, we have the famous Ben Greenfield of bengreenfieldfitness.com. All of you I know have heard of him, and we're going to kind of dive a little bit into him and his story and a little bit about something called biohacking. I know all of you have heard that term before, so can't wait to get him started. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
I'm psyched to have you on. It's cool. Good to see you here. I see you're walking on a treadmill while we're talking. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I see you have a pretty sick snowboard behind you there on your video.
I do. That's a Grateful Dead snowboard from, I don't even know what year it is. It's before Jerry Garcia died. It was used a few times.
It's got no binders on it, so I assume it's not being used.
This one is not using. I
don't know if I'd use my snowboard either if it was a Grateful Dead snowboard.
Exactly. Awesome. So what I want to talk about a little bit today with you is biohacking, and what I call biohacking 101, because it's a huge term that's out in the field, and fitness and health and longevity. But first, let's get a little bit into your backstory. I want like the cool 5-minute version of what's created Ben Greenfield and what he's up to now.
Well, I guess yeah, I mean, I don't want to waste too much of our listeners' time talking about me. I'd rather give them some value. But, I completed a master's degree in biomechanics and exercise physiology at University of Idaho, and spent the past couple of decades doing everything from running personal training studios and gyms to physiology laboratories to speaking and writing and podcasting, primarily on things like human nutrition and pharmaceuticals, biomechanics, and exercise and movement, anti-aging, longevity, biohacking, as you referred to, and just all manner of things related to attaining a better body and a better brain using preferably science with a little bit of that's one of the things I guess I'm kind of like known for, or whatever, would be like throwing in a little bit of woo woo, right? Like I'm into meditation, and I'm into chakras and meridians and the flow of energy through the body, and kind of a little bit of ancestral wisdom blended in with the modern science. But yeah, ultimately, I if I'm sitting next to somebody in an airplane, I just tell them I'm an author, but really I'm a blogger, podcaster, a little bit of a scientist, a supplement formulator.
And a crazy athlete, of course.
Yeah, consultant. Oh yeah, I raced professionally. I was in triathlon for about 10 years, and I was a 215 pound, 3% body fat bodybuilder before that, which I do not recommend if you want to be healthy. You look good on stage. Other than that, you're just like a slab of muscle laying on the couch. You can't even get a boner when your body fat is that low. Oh, and now I race professionally for Reebok and the sport of obstacle course racing, like Spartans, for example.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's what I do. A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Very cool. So, and I love that you call yourself in your bio, you call yourself a nerd. You're kind of into all of this stuff, and I love how you dive deep. And one of the most recent podcasts I listened to of yours with Casper. Really interesting, really cool. Having read his book and spoken to him as well, I want to hear your version, and you can kind of tell me a little bit of, if I use the word biohacking, what does that mean? If you're going to give me like a textbook definition.
I actually just got back from Europe where they call it biohacking. It's kind of funny. These Germans are like, oh, what's your biohacks? What's your top biohacks? Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, dude, like, most of what we see as biohacking in the U.S. It's not biohacking. It's like just basically well, let me give an example. Like a true biohacker is known as a grinder, where the human body is known as the wetware, and whatever you're doing to it is known as the hardware, right? So you might be implanting magnets into your fingers, during a surgical implant of magnets into your fingers so that you can better interact with your device, such as a phone, or better detect electromagnetic fields, such as one might do, like in that movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, right? Being able to interact with screens without touching them, etc. Or you'd be like Kevin Warwick, one of the first cyborgs who got a chip implanted in both he and his wife so that they could read each other's minds and communicate with each other or to each other without speaking. Or occasionally the hardware is more chemical, like the gentleman who got chlorophyll injected into his eyes to be able to have night vision. When you compare that kind of biohacking to like putting butter in your coffee, which is, in my opinion, just like making food, this is something that's far different. And so in the U.S. and in many other countries, we've all of a sudden given the term biohacking just about anything that seems kind of cool that is related to exercise or nutrition that might help us move the dial a little bit more quickly or a little bit more efficiently, might give us a shortcut or a better way of doing things. But in my opinion, it's not a biohack, right? We're not taking the human body in most of these situations. We're not doing gene editing and CRISPR, and we're not implanting things into our bodies for the most part. And so I guess the newer definition of biohacking, if we did want to wrap all that stuff into it, would just be the concept of taking your biology, and hacking it to do something a little bit more quickly than it might otherwise not be able to do. So, for example, I flew in from San Francisco last night. Whenever I'm on an airplane, I know that it interferes a little bit with cellular biology, specifically the electrochemical gradient across the cellular membrane, which means I'm going to produce less nitric oxide today. It also means I'm probably going to have lower activity of a mitochondrial enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase, which is very beneficial for producing cellular energy and ATP, but that doesn't operate that well when your electrochemical gradient is what it is when you've been 40,000 feet above the planet. Human evolution is not quite caught up with how to deal with that. So, like I'll wear, grab it from my desk. Like I have this sitting on my desk today, right? I'll wear this. It's just like red light. at a wavelength of about 10 hertz that I can wear while I'm working on an article later today, and it'll shine a little light in my nose and shine a little light on my head and activate cytochrome C oxidase and cause a release of nitric oxide. Right. So otherwise, I'd probably have to go. It's gray here in Spokane, right? So I'd probably have to figure out a way to find a sunny area and lay there for like 2 or 3 hours to get the same effect, right? So I'm hacking my way into that.
Okay, so speeding up the process.
Speeding up the process, shortcutting the process, and that type of thing. Or for example, like right before we got on this podcast, I was putting a little bit of this essential oil that I'm holding in my hand now. It's a lavender, peppermint, and rosemary, right? Peppermint and rosemary are great for cognition. And, you could say that for me to put this into an essential air diffuser at my office and be breathing it in, that might be like a biohack to enhance mental performance, right? So I would say that based on today's definitions, we could just say biohack would be hacking your biology, just doing something to get your biology to work more efficiently or to shortcut your way to some kind of a biological goal. Okay,
so in your experience, in the world that you've been living in for the past handful of years or more, as an athlete, as a researcher, if you will, doing all of these wild things, the biohacking, has it evolved like exponentially over the past, we'll say 5 years, what people are doing in this, and in the term you're using, biohacking now, or is it kind of like a slow and steady state? Like, so you're holding that electronic, that device up, looks like something maybe out of like Star Trek.
Yeah, it's evolved. I mean, like, consumer technology has become more user friendly, right? It's not that hard to order a Fitbit or a Jawbone and slap that thing on. I remember back in the day when you had to get like this like cell phone sized device that you like tape to your chest with a Bluetooth enabled heart rate monitor to be able to go on a bike ride and get your heart rate. Now you can do that with like a tiny little thing like the size of a square, or the size of a like a Post-it note, or no larger. And so yeah, a lot of these things are just becoming more consumer friendly. Higher amount of usability. I've got a little device back behind me now I can just go breathe into to see if I'm in ketosis, or if I how much fat I'm burning that week, rather than me having to take like a series of blood measurements, for example. So yeah, everything is becoming a little bit more accessible and user friendly, I'd say.
Are you seeing it when you're where you're speaking around the world and meeting all these people? Are people using these things on a regular basis, like someone like an average athlete, or is it someone that's kind of maybe in a professional state that would be using some of these biohacks?
Some athletes, like the Golden State Warriors, for example, like Steph Curry is using strobe goggles and float tanks and transcranial direct stimulation on his head, and different things to enhance recovery. And then some are kind of still in the dark ages, right? There's like this article that came out last week, I think it was on Slate, about LeBron James' advanced recovery methods, and it was like cold shower, eat a good protein after a meal. And it's like, and I don't consider that to be biohacking per se. But yeah, I mean, that you're seeing, for example, you want to look at who's kind of on the cutting edge of things. It would be European soccer teams, right? Those guys were using heart rate variability measurements to look at the activity and the balance of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system like 10 years ago, before anybody was talking about it in the US. Same thing with sleep, right? You look at European soccer teams and guys like Dr. Nick Littlehales, who I've interviewed on my podcast, who they don't even care how much sleep they get each night. They whole like 7 to 9 hours of sleep, they throw that out the window. All they look is sleep cycles, right? So like your movement from stage 1 to stage 4 sleep and back being one cycle, and all they look at is whether an athlete completes about 30 to 35 of those cycles over the course of 7 days. And if so, they know that athlete's nervous system and musculoskeletal system will be repaired and recovered. And so if an athlete, say, sleeps 4 hours on a transatlantic flight to compete or something like that, and they're low on sleep from a Monday to a Tuesday, they might the next day get in a nap and an extra sleep cycle, and then on like a Saturday have a 10-hour sleeping night, and eventually be caught up by Sunday and have all those sleep cycles in the bank. So yeah, I mean, like you see some athletic teams, just because there's a little bit more money involved, players' careers, et cetera, they're doing more, but there are still some folks that are in the dark ages. I mean, freaking I remember was it 3 years ago that the lights went off during the Super Bowl, the NFL
Yep.
Super Bowl,
Uh-huh.
and you watch the teams out there, and they're out there all doing static stretching, which we've known for 5 years in strength conditioning decreases force production and decreases sprint speed, right? But they're out there doing static stretching, right? But just because they're a good old boys network and that's the way they do things, and you go into the locker rooms where I go quite frequently, and you've got fructose and maltodextrin laden sports gels and old school steel and barbells, and they're drinking crappy plastic bottled water, and there's fluorescent LED lighting which shuts down the circadian rhythm and sleep cycles all over the gyms and the locker rooms, and there are no HEPA air filters to ensure that the athletes are not breathing in mold and fungus, so that their immune systems aren't compromised. And yeah, a lot of these teams, I'm flabbergasted with the millions of dollars that they get that they haven't caught on.
That's crazy. So that just blows my mind that we have these billion-dollar industries. They're just kind of throwing their performance in the garbage. But the next question on this is, there's these technologies like you were just holding before, all of this stuff you're talking about. Who is coming up with these hacks, or how are people finding them?
Well, just like in any industry, people find things through press releases, through magazine articles, through videos, through word of mouth online, through Reddit forums, through advertisements at supermarkets and grocery stores and television. I mean, I don't think people are finding them in any different way than they find new foods or new cars or anything like that.
Yeah, but I don't mean that way. Like me finding them. Like, how are the guys or women or men or women that are figuring these hacks out? It's like, wow, I have this.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, in many cases, it's a like what I showed you just a minute ago. It's called a Vilite, made by a company called Neuro, and they're run by a few scientists that do research on Alzheimer's patients and dementia. And that's often what you'll see is something is originally developed to manage chronic disease, whether it's because that's where grants might be had to actually generate money for R&D to develop something. Or in many cases, someone is pursuing that because they got, let's say, cancer, or a loved one got cancer, or Alzheimer's, or dementia. And so there's a lot of motivation. I think a lot of these things stem from, the desire to manage chronic disease, and then the trickle down effect of that to the general population, who realizes that they can be used for many more variables other than that, like something that could be used to manage Alzheimer's or dementia, whether it be a ketosis diet or high dose fish oil, or the use of caprylic acid in your coffee, or one of these nasal probes that I just showed you, or headlights. All of a sudden we realize, that can be used to help enhance my workday or give me more energy during the day. Or you see like this this more prevalent use of like psychedelics and microdosing with psychedelics now, right?
I started reading on that. That's wild.
Yeah, it's all trickled down from, more folks who might have been using drugs on a recreational level, and then found in smaller doses that there was almost like a helpful non-psychedelic, but still cognitively boosting effect, with like LSD or shrooms, or, Ibogaine, or something along those lines. So, yeah, I don't think we could say there's like any one place that people find out about these things, or that they're invented. But yeah, I mean, in many cases, it's management of some kind of condition or pursuit of some kind of a goal that, and you realize you can actually make it more palatable to the general population by producing a device or a supplement, or, or a biohack to help achieve that goal.
Yeah. So where do you see this stuff going, let's say, like in the next 5 years? Is it going to change exponentially, you think? Are people going to be starting to do?
Yeah. I don't know about exponentially, but I mean, yeah. I mean, you look at the past 5 years, and that'll inform me quite a bit about the next 5 years, as far as the Internet of Things and the number of devices that have popped up and become available. And look, like, I get literally every day boxes of stuff shipped to my house, all these different, quote, biohacks, unquote, or devices or technologies or supplements or bars or whatever. And I don't try everything. I don't endorse everything. I don't appreciate everything. And, for example, a lot of these technology-based biohacks, if it creates a non-native EMF, right, like a signal that will disrupt that cellular membrane integrity that I was referring to earlier, I generally won't use it, right? So a lot of these devices, they're designed to be very Bluetooth heavy, very Wi-Fi heavy, rely upon constantly emitting a signal. And, a lot of people think that, as a biohacker, for example, I personally walk around with wires sticking up out of my head and electrodes, and I don't. I mean, even like the headphones I'm wearing right now while I'm talking to you, I specifically spent like an extra $150 on these headphones because they don't produce a signal up by my head. They're very low, what is called EMF, and I measured them with a meter, and my head feels way better. My brain feels way better after talking for a few hours in the morning with these headphones on versus others. So I'm very cognizant of the overall effects of something on the body, and whether or not there's some kind of downstream biological effect from any of these devices. So even though you might look at the Internet of Things and see that it has exponentially increased over the past 10 years in terms of thermometers for your house and security systems and ways to monitor your personal environment or ways to monitor your body, et cetera, I eschew a lot of those things. I don't really go near a lot of those things just because I think that the cons outweigh the pros as far as being constantly connected and constantly bombarded with electromagnetic signals that really are not native to our body and that wind up doing damage to things like cellular membranes. So I try to keep things somewhat simple as well. And I always look at things through the lens of not just performance or enhancement, but also health and longevity.
Okay, so you've mentioned EMF quite a few times. I've just learned like little bits about it not too long ago from a guy named Dr. Steven Sinagra. I'm not sure if you know him, medical doctor, cardiologist. And
Steven Sinagra or Sinatra?
Oh, Sinatra, not Sinagra. Sinatra, I apologize.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, I know a Sinatra.
Sinatra, yes. Going into EMF, I mean, it was wild. Like he won't even have Wi-Fi in his house. He has it like in the building next to his house, so it's not close to him, which is wild. But you're getting down to the cellular level. So then my next question would be, when you're looking at these biological hacks, are you always focused on that getting down to the cellular level? How is it affecting me, like at that membrane level, and then kind of work your way out?
Yeah, exactly. Like your cell membranes are ideally in most situations going to operate best at a gradient, an electrochemical gradient, just like a battery across that membrane of about -40 to -80 millivolts, in that range. Coming off the airplane last night, I was probably at like -120 to -140, right? Which would significantly affect my cellular metabolism, my ability to produce energy, my ability to produce, like I mentioned, nitric oxide, and anything else that's produced from an intracellular standpoint. And so, by the time that this morning I was walking outside barefoot a little bit, I did a little bit of Tai Chi and Qigong. I took a cold shower, which is helpful. I breathe in some essential oils, and I have what's called a negative ion diffuser in my office, which helps a little bit with this as well. I'll put on this device that I showed you, after our call, which I'll wear every once in a while when I've been traveling. And I even slept last night on a grounding mat or an earthing mat, which plugs into my wall and has like a, grounding prong on it, which kind of helps to restore my body's electromagnetic potential while I'm asleep. And once you add all that stuff up, I'm probably pretty good. Like by like this afternoon, I'll be pretty good. A lot of people, they don't realize that flying will mess up your body pretty significantly for days. And because I travel so much, I'm pretty careful. But that's just an example of how I'll put a little things into my sleep habits or into my day after having traveled to address that electrochemical imbalance. And so, yeah, I find this incredibly important, and there's a night and day difference in terms of my immunity, frequency of sickness, energy levels, productivity, et cetera, especially me being a road warrior when I implemented a lot of these tactics that take into consideration the fact that the human body is a battery.
That's cool. So, and you take this with your adventure obstacle course racing. Do you? I mean, I know there's nutrition, which we can get into, but in the EMF world, does it affect your actual physical, strength, your physical endurance while you're doing these, traveling in the world, doing these races?
Not directly. Some people would have you to believe that you're going to break Olympic records by putting some nasal probe light up your nose, or by sleeping on a grounding mat, and it's not true. Like you recover a little bit more quickly. You sleep a little bit better, right? Like we could say that all these things indirectly relate to performance. Frankly, like I can perform just as well in a Spartan race on 4 hours of sleep as I can on 8 hours of sleep, but I just feel horrible. I'm miserable and I get sick after, right? So even though the performance doesn't change that much, I think the human body is pretty versatile. And, like I used to do great at tennis matches, and my go-to tennis meal was I'd pull into McDonald's and have a Big Mac supersized fries and a Coke before my tennis matches. And I still did great, right? But I also had acne and I got sick a lot and I got gut issues. But when I stepped onto the tennis court, I could pull it all together and still play pretty well. So for me, I think it's more about health and longevity than it is about performance. And I think one reason I say that is there's a lot of, no offense, but there's like a lot of almost like, fat bloggers in their mom's basement writing about how some biohack or some new thing they added to the blender with their tea is going to, all of a sudden be the new thing for sports performance, when in fact for sports performance, honestly, or athletic performance, something like that, comes down to like blood, sweat, and tears, right?
Hard work.
Like I'm a little bit more Rocky 3 when it comes to that, right? Like give me a cabin out in the woods in the snow and a pull-up bar and some heavy iron and maybe a sled to drag, and like you're going to get a lot more out of that than you are out of all these silly little biohacks. But at the same time, there's like what is it, Rocky 3 where he fights the Russian?
I don't even remember which
Rocky
one that
3,
was, but
Rocky
yeah.
4, the big rush. He's hooked up to all these electrodes and working in the lab. Like I certainly think that there's something to be said for that too. But sometimes I think that part of things, like having a bunch of electrodes coming out of your body and doing all these biohacks and breathing the specialized air before you work out and taking all the handfuls of supplements and stuff. Sometimes I think people view that as a replacement for hard work. It's not a replacement for hard work. If anything, that's the stuff that might allow you to have a longer sporting or athletic career. That's the stuff that might allow you to sleep better, so you're cooler to be around and happier during the day and maybe productive after you've gotten your workouts in. But let's face it, I mean, like some of the best performing badasses I know in sports, they sleep 5 or 6 hours a night and they don't take care of their bodies that well and they still perform well. But I might be doing the same thing, but I just might be doing it for a decade longer because I'm taking care of myself.
Fair. That's actually pretty cool. So the best biohack for fitness is hard work.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
That's so cool. So let's get into like a couple things that, a person that's, wants to live longer, a person wants to be able to perform, like you said, be able to perform another 10 years, like in a sport they love, like, well, let's say just like a tennis player, me as a runner or a lifter. What are like 3 simple hacks, if you will, that will enhance like something that, may not need to buy something like a device like that today? What could we do?
I would say first 3 things that come to mind. Number 1 would be enhance your body's ability to produce nitric oxide and enhance your body's ability to be able to have good vagus nerve tone, which is a very, very good way to increase your propensity for recovery from a neuromuscular standpoint, your ability to sleep, etc. And enhance your ability to be able to burn fat a little bit more readily, which is something that affects a lot of athletes' power to strength ratios or power to speed ratios or power to weight ratios. And that would be with something like a cold shower or a couple of cold showers every day, cold soak, cold bath, cold immersion, cold shower, anything like that. That'd be one. You don't have to do those fancy cryotherapy chambers. That doesn't work as well.
Okay.
Nah. Cold water immersion is the way to go, especially if your face gets wet. That's where you get a lot of vagus nerve activation. So that'd be one. Really get yourself to the point where, pardon the expression, you don't give a shit about cold water. You can just get in and out of it and not care. That's a good relatively free performance hack.
Yeah. Okay.
Next one, I would say, would be to track your sleep cycles. Not free, but you can do it pretty easily, with a ring or. So I use a ring called an Aura ring because I can put it in airplane mode. And so there's no Wi-Fi or Bluetooth bombarding my body while I'm asleep. But getting to know your sleep really well, because that's where so much recovery occurs. and understanding what affects your sleep. Like, do I get better deep sleep cycles when I eat an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours before bedtime? Because it differs from person to person. Or do I sleep better when I use, let's say, melatonin versus CBD versus nothing at all, or does that raw honey apple cider vinegar before you go to bed trick work for me, or does it make me take 20 extra minutes longer to fall asleep? Like, I think that if you're going to quantify anything, sleep's a pretty good one to quantify, and getting to know what lifestyle and nutrition and exercise variables in your life affect your sleep. That would be number 2. Again, not free, but it's not that expensive to get like a good sleep tracking device.
So what was the one you said?
Track sleep. The one that I like, and I've got a bunch of interviews with these cats on my website. I'm going to interview them again on Thanksgiving because they just came out with an athlete dashboard for like coaches to be able to track a whole bunch of different athletes' sleep and heart rate variability and stuff and body temperature. It's really good. It's called an Oura Ring, Oura. I've got a few articles and screenshots of it on my website.
Yep, I'll point people there.
Yeah. The last thing I would say would be breath work. This concept of prana, chakra, life force, energy, vital energy, etc. Like, a lot of it's related to breath and just the ability to be able to get the body into a state where it's constantly engaged in deep diaphragmatic breathing, which helps out with everything from digestion to bowel movements to oxygenation to energy to nitric oxide production. That'd be another one. I mean, something as simple as like, while you're at work during the day or studying, you tie a kite string around your waist at your belly button level, and you should be able to feel that kite string kind of like moving in and out with each breath. Or you download a very simple breathing app. Like one I was playing around with this week, kind of reviewing, was called Oak, O-A-K. And it teaches you just some very simple breathing cycles. There's another one that I have on my website called Nature Beat that ties heart rate measurements with your breathing cycles, so you can actually see how your breathing affects some of those nervous system measurements that I was talking about, like your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. And that one's called Nature Beat, and that has what's called a breath pacer on it, where it'll teach you how to pace your breath, how to engage in deep breathing, and how to see how that's actually affecting your nervous system. So I'd say the top 3 things that come to mind would be cold showers, tracking your sleep, and learning how to breathe properly.
Very cool. That cold shower, man, that's a challenge one, but I like what you said, like, just do it, screw it. It's
and
it's a difficult
I'll be
one
honest
for
with
me.
you, like, after you've committed to it for several months, it becomes less and less challenging.
All right, Locker Nation, taking a 2-second break here. We did have a technical glitch. That's why you hear me now, not in conversation with Ben Greenfield, but I hope you are loving every bit of it. Hopefully you're taking notes if you were not driving, but in any other situation, I hope you are taking some notes, because he's about to drop some knowledge on you. Cold showers, that's a pretty tough one to tackle, but it is an awesome one to tackle. Get in on it. You've heard me talk about it before. Just go ahead, jump in, and here we are, back with the show. When coming to cold showers, is it better to actually go in with a warm shower and then turn the heat off after you shower, or is it better to go in just cold on and go?
Yeah, when you're first getting started, ease yourself into it when you're first getting started. You have to stress yourself out. But get to the point where you can get to that same state of relaxation that you get from the warm water just by controlling your breath and your energy and your attitude, right? Like, I know somebody's nervous system is strong if I've got somebody, some athlete hanging out my house with me, and I say, you want to go jump in the cold pool? And there's like, yeah. And there's no difference in their face, their breathing, their level of strain or anything when we jump in the cold pool, right? And I learned this when I was in Encinitas training with some of these Navy SEALs at Kokoro, and they get into the cold ice bath, like chock full of ice, like the tub that you sit in, and look just like they got into a hot water bath, right? No change in physical characteristics, no change in the face, no change in the breath work, no like you see a lot of people do. You want to train yourself to where you get to the point to where you don't have that mammalian dive reflex, and you don't have that change in attitude and emotions in response to cold water. And that's called stress resilience. And there's a huge transfer of that into anything from shooting a free throw when the game's on the line to, serving when you're down low 40 at match point, to keeping your head screwed on straight when you're in the middle of a triathlon and trying to remember if you fueled properly. Any time you need to think better or perform better under stress, there's a lot of crossover there.
Okay, well, that's really neat. And you also mentioned earlier, just to turn a little bit here, just to pivot a little bit, meditation. Really into meditation?
I'm not really into it.
Okay.
It's important to be able to slow down and to take a moment to breathe and to ensure that you're not spending the day in a stressed out state. They're able to possess the capability to calm the sympathetic nervous system and the stress response. This does not mean you have to download the Headspace app, do 10 minutes of Headspace a day. This does not mean you have to go take a transcendental meditation course, right? So like my kids, what they do is a few times a week, I have them go sit outside. I'll have them go sit outside. I give them the option, but they do it because I've explained to them the importance of it. They do what's called a sit spot, which is more of like a Native American, I guess you could call it a meditative technique, but you just kind of, you have your spot. They go sit outside and you taste the air and you see what you can see and you smell what you can smell and you touch the ground and you open up your senses, just very basic mindfulness, outdoor mindfulness, and you just sit there for 15 minutes. You're not reading, you're not talking on the phone, you're not listening to anything, you're just being silent. Another example would be, this morning I went for a walk. I just walked for 20 minutes, just breathing through my nose, walking up on the farm field behind my house, thinking and walking, no cell phone, no podcasts and audiobooks, just walking, right? So basically the idea is that you have at least some point during the day where you're just being silent and or still and quiet. At the end of the day today, I have a little infrared sauna. It's actually a really big infrared sauna. I'll go sit in that and I lay down and I stare at the ceiling and I fold my hands and I just close my eyes and I breathe for a little while. Right after dinner, I'll do that. And, sure, I could do what a lot of people do, which is, pop a Valium or an Ambien or go smoke some weed or, have an extra glass of wine or whatever to chill at the end of the day. But often just kind of being quiet and chilling and sitting and breathing works just as well. And it doesn't have to be fancy meditation. You don't have to go take a university course or a Udemy course on meditation, even though some more advanced forms of meditation are pretty cool. Like you can go to some very interesting places from a psychedelic standpoint with holotropic breath work. And you can allow yourself to get by on less sleep with daily transcendental meditation. And you can, you can do things like Wim Hof does, right? And get your body to the point where it upregulates its own production of immune system cofactors with like yogic fire breathwork style meditation. So there are things that you can do if you decide to take this to the next level. But ultimately, yeah, I'm simply a fan of having at some point during the day, whether it's prayer or sitting in the sauna or a nice walk or a sit spot or whatever, just having something that's like your rest and digest part of the day that's separate from, when you go to bed at night to sleep.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to ask you one last question. What's the one thing, if you had to tell, everybody one thing, what's the one thing you would tell them that they need to do to live a healthy lifestyle? That's a hard one, I know, for you.
Well, no, it's not hard. It's just like it depends so much from person to person, right? It's going to be way different. Somebody who's obese, they need to freaking like do intermittent fasting for a year and probably a few week-long water fasts, right? Yeah. I'd say that's the one thing that you could do. Or, in somebody who's stressed out, it would be to, meditate for 30 days in a row, right? So it does really depend, but painting with a broad brush, I would say that the number one thing that you could do that can lower blood pressure and improve sleep and lower risk of heart disease, improve wellness in terms of decreasing a lot of markers of mortality, et cetera. This sounds kind of woo, but it would just be to every single day at the beginning of the day or the end of the day or both, write down one thing that you are grateful for. Write it down, because the act of writing it really solidifies the practice. But just a very simple practice of gratefulness generally seems to improve the health of just about anybody on the face of the planet. So that's where I'd start.
I like that. Gratitude. That's been a theme of a lot of people I've spoken to in the past 3 months. I think it's all ended with that.
Well, I'm jaded too because I wrote a gratitude journal. So
well, I know.
That.
How many books? I'm looking at your website. I'm like, holy cow, this guy's.
Yeah, I like to write books.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, that's all I want to talk to you about today. I think this has been an awesome kind of journey, just learning a little bit about biohacking and what it really is and what it seems to be today and where it might be going. And I love that the three main things, from cold showers and stimulating the vagus nerve to tracking your sleep. You can use simple devices, like you said, the Oura Ring, which I'm going to point to people on your device to some of those interviews you said you had, as well as breath work. I think that's something that anybody and everybody should do. And lastly, number 4, we're going to get everybody, maybe should start a little journal or get your journal, right? A gratitude journal that they can put something in daily. So everybody, you can find all of this information, which will be in the show notes at lifestylelocker.com/Ben Greenfield. Will be more in the end. So Ben, I want to thank you so much, buddy. So much for being on the call.
And, thanks for having me on.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Locker Nation, I hope you have enjoyed Ben Greenfield. And as you see, there's a pretty big theme that's going across all of our shows. No matter what field you're in, everybody seems to now be talking about gratitude. That's an important one. So make sure you start doing some research on gratitude. We're going to find some more people to give you more knowledge on that. But as far as Ben Greenfield and this biohacking 101, knowing what it is now, I hope you do take some action steps. All his details will be in the show notes. He's got a pretty sweet podcast himself. He's got a pretty sweet website himself. He speaks all over the country. As a matter of fact, we're planning on going with a couple of listeners down to New York City to see him, which is this Tuesday. If you're listening to day 1, it's going to be the day after we're seeing him in New York. But if not, check his calendar out. He speaks all over. And you can get all those details at lifestylelocker.com/Ben Greenfield. Until then, Locker Nation, peace out. Bye-bye.